Hello, welcome to Lúgubre pero Habitable. That could be translated into English by gloomy but livable. Today you will be surprised asking yourself, what is the relationship with the image the French soldiers in the First World War, terrible one with more than 20 million people, terrible image from the front war, and at the same time, these Pacific Tibetan monks, normally synonymous of harmony and beautiful things in Tibet. They are related, and I will explain later if you follow me into another room where I found some amazing things, some amazing stuff. And I want to do this in English because some people complain, some followers, that I do everything in Spanish, although there are subtitles in French, English, and even Chinese. But today, even if my English is not so posh and elegant, I will do my best to do everything in English. Let's go. Hello, this is one of the rooms we are opening for the bed and breakfast. It's a blue room, and of course I have to redecorate things. Thanks God, the castle is plenty of stuff and things, then I can move one thing from one place to another, and it's even entertaining. I found a very big chest, a trunk. I don't know what do you prefer, chest or trunk, and I brought it here with big effort. And I found a lot of interesting things and other things related to what I explained to you before, the relationship between the First World War and the Tibet. Let me explain you the things, and I will show you, and don't be worried, I will not explain long everything item by item. Let's see. First of all, you see this amazing long in silk. It's like a decoration for altars or for the beams in the Tibetan temples with the Buddhas protecting them. Let me put here like decoration in order to create like a scenography. Will be better, I think. And as I told you, it's plenty of things. And one of the things that most amazed me is this hat, the typical Tibet monk hat. This is yellow. It means it belongs to the Gelugpa sect. It's one of the 5 main streams of the Tibetan faith. Dalai Lama belonged to this, the Gelugpa one. And since I read Tintin, I wanted to have one. And of course, I will use it and I will try it. Let me see. I don't know if I look very spiritual, but I like it. Let me hand it here. Also some boots, Tibetan monks' boots. They are not comfortable, I am sure, because they have not left and right foot. Both are the same. But remember, until 1870s, there was no different size for the there was no different right or left for the shoes. This is handmade, probably is very good for cold weather. Here is a much more interesting thing. It's a Tibet book. I know some of the things because there are labels inside explaining the things. It's made by hand, it's calligraphy. It's a prayer book, or maybe it's theology, I don't know Tibetan, I cannot tell you. And they really like this. And here you have some of the deities protecting the book and the monks, or the ones you have to worship during the praying. Bueno, Tibetan rosary. This I also always like it. The praying wheel. I don't know if it's right or left side, but I know that inside, when you move, it has to be in the same way that the papers, they are inside full of prayers. Normally are parts of all pergamins or manuscripts. Here you see clothes for monks. Another hat. This is orange. I never seen orange before. And plenty of the clothes for the monks. Sorry, that's too heavy. And the typical Tibet flags representing the 5 elements. I think is wind, water, etc. And there's a shell for calling to praying or calling for the prayer. Let me try. It's a very nice job made with turquoise, coral, and very well carved silver. Well, I hope monks do much better than me. And this thing to take the butter yak tea, horrible one, I think, because I tasted. And this is one interesting piece. It's a kapala. As Tibetan people believe in reincarnation, when monks are dead, they cut the skulls and they use half of the skull for offerings or even for drink or for having soup or this champa thing they eat. Um, there's a French brevier. I don't know how it's in English, like for going to mass and to pray. It's very interesting because it's in Latin, but the owner of this wrote his story among the Latin lines with a very, very tiny calligraphy. In fact, I should use augmenting lens to see it. Later we talk about that. Well, it's all this. You see, this is a small altar for the people who make pilgrimage. Probably you have seen these people who is making these long traverses in the Tibet. But why explaining all this? Why is our relationship more close? Because this chest belonged to Jan Le Floch, and Jan Le Floch was married to one of the sisters of my grandfather, and he has a very peculiar story. First of all, he belonged to a very poor family of French fishermen in Bretagne, and before when people has no money, or poor people send the kids to the minor seminaries. The same happened in Tibet. They send the kids to the monasteries because a way that they are fit with a ceiling and they receive some kind of education. Then Jan Le Floch was sent to a seminary, minor for kids, in La Rochelle, amazing town, you should visit. And there he did all the studies, till philosophy and theology, but then it explodes the First World War. And as mess of the normal it was, all the seminaries who were not ordained as priests went to the front war. He had a very terrible experience because he was during 4 years in the trench war in the north, in the Chemin-des-Dames. Chemin-des-Dames was a very famous area of the First World War. Remember, it was a terrible, cruel war. More than 40 million people between casualties and death. 20 million were dead. And he was there, and imagine him, in the trenches, between the mud, bad food, terrible big rats, well fed with the corpse of the dead soldiers. And there, the front never reached, they always stopped, stuck. They cannot advance more than 5 kilometers, one and back, come and back. The Germans, the English also there, and it was a terrible war. Then they started some kind of activity. There were the presidents of the commandos, I think, because it was the trench raiders, because there was a big lack of food. So ministers never came in time. I don't know. Nobody knows who started this practice. The Germans, the English, the Americans, the French, the Belgians. But in fact, in the night, they cover their bodies with a special, not armor, with metal plugs and with thin skins, leather skins, and not using fire weapons, only daggers or knives and big sticks with nails. They go after the wire fencing. Of course, they always have to have pliers to cut the enemy wire fencing. And across the shell craters and the dead bodies they found, they attack the enemy lines in the night in order to kill the guards, to kill soldiers, to make as much damage as possible. Of course, to destroy guns or big machine guns like the Wickers or something like this. And also, very important, to steal food, because as I told you, there was a big lack of food in the front. He was there 4 years, terrible. Imagine how much blood and horrible things he has seen. It was also the chemical war, the use of chemicals. So many people got deformed or blind or with terrible disease. And many officials and sub-officials were dead, because if you remember, in this First World War, still there was a lot of front attacks with bayonet. And many people died. Then he was ranked to lieutenant, and he finished the war like a captain with a lot of decorations on the chest. He had a very fantastic attitude, and the government asked him if he wants to apply for become an official and go to Saint-Cyr, but he declined in order to go back to the seminary and to be ordained like priest. He was ordained like priest, and as he has shown a big capacity for language, remember in the seminaries, in the church, you study Latin, Hebrew, and all Greek. Then he was prepared to learn more foreign languages. And he was sent to Indochine. Remember Indochine, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, was a French colony. And he was sent then to Hanoi, and he departed from Marseille with one of the famous emblematic ships that Gutor wrote, the sea route from Marseille to Vietnam. Then in Vietnam, the bishop in Hanoi was very clear and very straight to him and told him that the plan was for him to improve Vietnamese by sure, but also to start to learn some Tibetan and to know more about Tibet, because the plan of the church, of the French church in Indochina, with the blessing of the Vatican, of course, was to introduce in Tibet in order to start to learn how the situation goes, because the plan was to spread Christianism, Catholicism there. This is not new. Before in China, all the churches, Anglicans, Baptists, Methodists, Catholics, of course, they wanted to taste the watermelon of the big far west, the China and Tibet, of course. Because first of all, because Oriental people was very religion, and it's easier to put your ideas inside people who already has a religion established. And the idea was to start with the monks, because if you convince a monk, the monks are already, Tibetan monks are people already prepared to spread the message. They have theological knowledge and also oratory, that if you convince a monk, it's much more easy to spread your message. Remember what happened with Calvin or Luther. There were Catholic monks, and after they become the starters of new faith. Then he was like an undercover, because the church before has like these undercover people. Catholic Church before was much more powerful than now, and also the teachings and learnings was much more rigorous and exigent than now, and people was much more well prepared than now. And Catholic Church has been already in China from time ago. First of all were the Orthodox and Nestorians, but with the Jesuits, Ricci, Castiglioni, and a German guy called Schall, I think, they were there. The problem is they make something called the heresy of the Chinese rites, and part of his labor was lost. And also with the Taiping and Boxer War, many Christians, for all the Christian faith, were killed, and not only the missionaries, the Chinese and people too. Then they decide he will go to Tibet. How this should be done? Very easy. They sent him through Vietnam. The French already started a very profitable line with China through Yunnan province. Even there's a long bridge made by Eiffel School, still working, and from there to Mengzi and Honghe province. Mengzi is a very interesting city. Honghe is the biggest producer of granite fruit, and there's a lot of reminiscence of the French presence. There's a French station, it's like one in Provence. There's the La Laiterie, where they make the cheese. They brought Normand Bash cows, and they prepare camembert and cheese. You know, French cannot go out without this. And also there's the French prison, the French consulate, the French bank, the French warehouses. There's plenty of French history there. That it was not difficult for them to send Jan Le Floch, and from there he started to go inside China with all the fake papers, because I told you he was like an undercover. He was there not like a monk, not like a priest. He was there like a specialist in Oriental studies, and like a catedratic of La Sorbonne, and he has all the certificates to prove that, made by the Vatican and the French government. French government also interested, because with this information is also good for them in case of some military action need to be taken in the future. He will reach to Kunming, and after to Songdian. Songdian was a famous old city already with people there was Tibetan. Remember that Tibet was much more bigger than now. But after the attack, the invasion of Chinese in 1951, Chinese called liberation or freedom of the Tibet. Tibet was much bigger, but some parts were separated from the actual Tibet and were integrated in another Chinese province as Yunnan or Sichuan, etc. Then Songdian, now called Shangri-La, is called Shangri-La in honor of the famous book of Hilton, the Lost Horizons or Last Horizons. And from there he go to Lhasa, an amazing trip full of stories. Everything is explained in there. We will have time to explain this. And he arrived to Tibet, as I told you, with full of the stories and amazing situations that deserve to be explained. And he arrived to Lhasa. There was a French consul there, was a commercial consul. They have not real diplomatic people. He was a commerciant, a merchant. But sometimes many countries do this. When you have some people there of trust, you give him the consular power. It's also a way to obtain easier way to enter in the capital business and also in the government, the local government. This guy is interesting. He was trying to produce cheese and butter made from the Pashmina goat. We never know if he reached his targets, but he introduced Jan Le Floch inside the Dalai Lama court in Potala Palace. The Dalai Lama in this moment, the 13th one, Gyatso, was a very open mind. He was the one who stopped the capital penalty in Tibet, only in cases of treason or something can be. And he was surprised by the knowledge of Jan Lefloc, also his good presence and how fluent he was already in Tibetan. And he opened many doors to him. He also provided him with a lot of salvaconductus and papers to go around all Tibet, all the monasteries. This Dalai Lama was also interesting because he was victim of a big complot made by other monks, almost killed them, and it's the famous complot called the enchanted boots. They put poison inside his boots and he almost died of this. Well, and then the idea from Lhasa, he started to visit Tibet freely. And before him has been another important French guy, Henri Delon, a military, who made a lot of interesting notes and plans about Tibet. And at the same time was also Alexandra David-Néel, a famous voyageur, femme. He was a woman, very, very brave. He was alone in Tibet, making a lot of interesting things. Even I think there's a film about her, but we'll talk about her later because they meet with Jan Lefloc. Many things to explain, but this is for another chapter. Hope it will be interesting for you.